Hello, and welcome to another edition of Academic Matters. I'm Joe Marbach, the Provost at LaSalle University. In this segment, I'm joined by Dr. Anthony Paul Smith, who is an assistant professor in the Department of Religion. Anthony, welcome.
Thank you.
Anthony, you're relatively new, so tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up here at LaSalle.
Okay. Well, I was born in Denver. I guess we want to start at the beginning. I was born into a white working class family. I was actually the first kid in my family to go to college, and I went to DePaul University in Chicago, and I majored in philosophy there. And after I graduated, I wanted to do graduate work, so I went to the University of Nottingham in the UK, where I studied philosophical theology. And then I moved back in 2010 back to Chicago and taught at DePaul actually for a year, and interviewed for the job here, and then I was here.
And it's here, okay.
So I started in 2012.
Yeah. So with your background, philosophical theology is more of an interdisciplinary approach. Is that the best way to kind of describe it? Off air,
Yeah.
you were trying to describe it, but
Yeah. So philosophical theology, I usually joke that I don't know what it means either. But it's a form of doing theology that uses resources from from philosophy. And it's sort of an interdisciplinary approach. It asks big questions, and like big questions of why we're here, how do things fit together, is there a purpose, those sort of big philosophical questions. But it also engages with faith communities. And so my work engages a great deal with Christianity, obviously, but also with the other major monotheisms, so Judaism and Islam. Yeah, it's pretty interdisciplinary, though.
Yeah. One of the things that our religion department's known for is its commitment to social justice, and with your hire and with some other folks, it's really become quite a young department. New chair, and so it's a very active department on campus now in kind of pursuing a social justice type of agenda. Off air, we were talking about one of the courses you're teaching this semester, which is very unique. Tell me a little bit more about it.
So I'm teaching a religion course, an honors religion course called Religion Is, and we are looking at different theories of religion through the lens of the mass incarceration crisis. Many people may have been going to Prison Nation events this semester, which is a series of lectures and workshops organized in part by the Department of Religion, but also sociology and criminal justice, and working with City as Classroom and also Explorer Connections. We're right now, there are 2.4 million people incarcerated in the United States, which is higher than anywhere else in the world. And we could debate whether that's fair or not, but the reality is that 2.4 million people shows that it's a symptom of a wider problem, perhaps, that we need to think about, and especially our students' generation is going to need to think about. And so for this class, we decided to try to take the academic study of religion, theories of religion, which is normally presented in a pretty abstract way, disengage from big social questions like the prison crisis, and instead of tried to make that the anchor point for talking about it.
I mean, on its face, one would think, well, what does religion have to do with those who are incarcerated? Yeah. Isn't it, if they had religion before, they wouldn't be incarcerated on the flip end or something like that? Yeah. But you're looking at some larger questions as well, and some practical elements of incarceration.
Yeah. So the question of what does religion have to do with prisons, I think, is a question that my students had on the first day when I told them that this was what we were doing. Interestingly, right here in Philadelphia at Eastern State Penitentiary, we can see the role of religion in shaping the prison system. So if you go there, you can take the tour, and on that tour they explain how the cells were modeled after monks' cells. And I mean, even the name penitentiary, it's a religious term, and it means that they were trying to encourage prisoners to reform their soul in that place. And then the question of, well, what does it have to do with prisoners today? Well, religion's a really messy thing. To have religion does not necessarily mean you're a good person, and to mess up in your life, to commit a crime, does not necessarily make you not a religious person. And so a lot of these guys who find themselves incarcerated, they may have gone in with a religion, but a lot of those guys also find religion as a source of comfort when they are locked up. And so we're actually reading a book by Joshua Dubler, who just spoke here recently on his book called Down in the Chapel. And it's an ethnography, so it's almost like a narrative of these guys' experience. And he really allows them to just speak. And that's allowed us to try to use some of the theoretical tools while engaging with these real people engaged in religious practice.
So he's cataloged their stories, the stories of prisoners, and it's been in specific prisons or a prison?
Yeah, it's one prison, it's Graterford.
Graterford, okay.
Which is the maximum security prison closest to us here in Philadelphia, and it houses many people from Philadelphia who have been incarcerated there. It's a really fantastic book. It's been a great anchor point for the class.
Okay. Now, in addition to the book, you've also taken the students on a field trip or field trips.
Just one.
Just one.
So they were asked to take a field trip to Eastern State Penitentiary, because that's a wonderful resource that we have here in Philadelphia, and a resource available to LaSalle. And they have a beautiful Jewish chapel there that they've restored, and also the Catholic chapel has also been restored, and there's some really wonderful murals that were painted by an inmate there. So they go there and they experience this dead prison, this kind of relic. Mm-hmm. And then in conversations with my colleague, Dr. Taylor in criminal justice, I decided that it was worth going to an active prison and trying to have a conversation with some of the men who work in a chapel there, just so that the students could have the experience of actually interacting with a real person who's in that situation, and sharing a kind of dialogue. And so we went to CF, and we had a really remarkable conversation with 3 inmates there that the students reported was a very powerful experience for them.
They were exposed to people they wouldn't normally get a chance to talk to.
Yeah, I mean, so I take pretty seriously this notion in the LaSallian tradition of association, and it's part of our mission that we go and associate, we be with, and so one thing that did come up on the tour that my students even brought up was we didn't want this to be a kind of like a zoo tour. We didn't want these people to feel dehumanized by our presence, and so we were invited in the chapel and we had a dialogue. We associated with folks that most people don't go and talk to people in prison. It's a neglected part of our society in a lot of ways, unless you're a family member or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it was a really powerful experience in that sense, I think, too.
Okay. Anthony, let me shift gears a little bit, and let's talk about some of your research. You just had a book come out about less than a year ago, I guess.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that and what that research has led you to.
So the book is, it's got a kind of weird title. It's a non-philosophical theory of nature, ecologies of thought. I think it should be the other way, but the publisher thinks that Google wouldn't like it, so we went with that title.
And marketing is everything.
Yeah, well, and it's a book that engages with the history of philosophy, the history of theology, and scientific ecology in order to try to think up in order to try to construct a theory of nature that is adequate to the environmental crisis at the moment. So the concept of nature arises out of philosophy and theology in the Western tradition, but it hasn't really taken on board some of the new concepts and ideas that arise out of scientific ecology. So that was the project in that text, was trying to kind of bring them together in what's called a unified theory. And so it wasn't to just pay lip service to the ecology, but it wasn't also to make ecology somehow fit philosophy and theology.
Okay. Well, was it designed primarily to inform philosophical thought about ecological changes, or or inform ecological thought about the philosophical approach. You know, one's very real, and one's more cerebral.
Yeah.
Or-
It was, I mean, maybe overly ambitious, but it was kind of trying to do both in a certain respect. And so I had actually done much of the research in dialogue with ecologist friends of mine who work at DePaul University in this thing called the Institute for Nature and Culture. And so I was trying to think, what can philosophy and theology do to help them work through some of the tricky problems? But then also, what can ecology tell us for people trying to think through this concept of nature that would help us rethink some of the philosophical and theological problems? So it's really ambitiously trying to do both of those things.
Okay. Is it presented as a dialogue between the two, or what was your approach?
Yeah. So the approach I used comes in part from this French philosopher who I've translated a number of books of, named Francois Laruelle, and he creates this kind of interdisciplinary approach that he calls a unified theory. And another way that he describes it that might make more immediate sense is he calls it a democracy of thought. And so it's trying to put all of these discourses on the same plane and in a kind of dialogue, where oftentimes in philosophy of science, for example, the sort of assumption is that philosophy is providing the words that science doesn't have. Or if you go talk to scientists, most of them just don't necessarily care what philosophy is saying at all, and so they see their discourses affecting the real world in that way. And so the sort of simplistic way to describe how he thinks of disciplines interacting is that they aren't hierarchical. They aren't made to be hierarchical in that way. They have to be on the same level and speak to each other as kind of equals. So that's the kind of general approach.
Okay. We've got less than a minute. What's next in terms of the research agenda?
Well, I'm finishing 2 books on Francois Laruelle, just kind of general introductions to his work. And then I have a project on environmental ethics from a theological and philosophical perspective, and racism, bringing those 2 discourses together. So
Okay.
kind of a bit.
Yeah, it sounds like you're going to be busy.
Yeah, in addition to teaching.
In addition to, great. My guest has been Dr. Anthony Paul Smith, an assistant professor in the Department of Religion at LaSalle University. I'm Joe Marbach, the provost at LaSalle. Please stay tuned when I'll be joined by Dean Joe UGRAS, who is the head of the Continuing and Professional Studies unit here at LaSalle.
From our campus to the city of Philadelphia. Tune in and watch, because we know you will love LaSalle TV.
Cyberbullying comes in many forms and can happen 24/7. If you or someone you know is a victim of cyberbullying, take preventative and assertive action. Keep evidence and document all instances. Remember to record dates, times, descriptions, and also save and print screenshots. Block your cyberbully and present your evidence to school officials or law enforcement. No one deserves to be a victim of cyberbullying, and together we can end it. For more information, visit stopbullying.com.
There's something for everyone at LaSalle TV.
I watch LaSalle TV.
I watch LaSalle TV.
The baseball team watches LaSalle TV.
I watch LaSalle TV.
I watch LaSalle TV.
Miro Televisión de LaSalle.
Vedo io la televisione LaSalle.
Я дивлюсь ласальську телевізію і дуже вона мене цікавить.
我睇電視.
And you can too. Follow us, like us, and watch us on LaSalle TV.
Welcome back to Academic Matters. Once again, I'm Joe Marbach, the Provost at LaSalle University. In this segment, I'm joined by Dr. Joseph UGRAS, who's the Dean of the College of Continuing and Professional Studies and also the Associate Provost for International Education at LaSalle. It's a mouthful, Joe, but thanks for coming back to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Joe, in the many hats that you wear, the unifying theme is expanding LaSalle's footprint in different markets. It's really set up by changing demographics. The number of traditional 18-year-olds is declining. It's projected to decline for the next 5 to 10 years. So we're looking at new markets. Tell us about emerging markets and how you've approached that.
The big thing that is happening in our country is there are a lot of adults who don't have a college degree. They have some college credits, but they don't have what we call the completion. So there's a lot of work done by the government and also by universities in getting folks back to universities and get them move beyond the credits they have to a associate's degree and to getting a full degree. And also continuing with that pattern, a lot has been written this year, especially by the book written by the French scholar Piketty about income and how income divergence is impacting our world. And a lot has written about that in politics, so it's a very controversial topic. However, when we look at the income divergence, those who have education do consistently much better than those who don't have a college degree.
Right. This has been pointed to when people talk about the value of a college education. Well, over a lifetime, the difference between a bachelor's degree and a high school degree can be $1 million in earnings.
Exactly. And even beyond that, when you look at the graduate degree, that really pays off. So it also impacts unemployment rate. So our unemployment rate has been going down, but it has never been an issue for those who have careers and good education to enter that field. So we have been looking at what are the patterns, what are emerging fields in education, what kinds of degrees do adult educations need to get for the career advancements that they're seeking. So our analysis shows, for example, we are about to launch a program in cybersecurity. So cybersecurity is, obviously we read in the media all the time how big a problem that is in many companies. Sure. Of course, it hit the media with Target and Home Depot. And
I was going to say anybody who has a Target card or a Home Depot credit card knows the importance of cybersecurity these days.
Exactly. So Cisco just came out with a report that shows that there are 300,000 jobs that are unfulfilled in the field. And the jobs are not going to be fulfilled by the universities. Universities are not fast enough to deliver those programs. So I'm going back to why LaSalle and how does this fit to LaSalle mission. Jean-Baptiste de LaSalle was a very bright man. So he realized that back then in France, that education is what individuals need for moving themselves in economic situations. So we're doing really the same thing. We're launching new ideas, new programs. So cybersecurity is one of these things that we are going to launch that within the next year. Another one that we've been doing a lot of research on is the area of analytics. And analytics is, simply said, decision-making beyond intuition.
So with the big data, we've talked about that. And,
exactly.
Just how you process so much information.
So there's so much information out there, and the decisions that were simply based on intuition now are supported by data that is all around us. And how do you take that data? How do you put data into use? And how do you, for example, of course, there's always been financial analytics. People have tried to figure out how the stock market moves based on a certain pattern. So that is nothing new. But let's add to that marketing analytics. Rather than making marketing decisions based on intuition, making the marketing decision based on data.
And spending patterns and preferences.
Exactly.
Joe, these programs are being offered in different formats. This is not offered in the traditional face-to-face method that many folks would associate with going to college. We're looking at online delivery for these programs.
Yes, absolutely. What is also happening is our adult learners are so busy with work, with family, with other responsibilities, and convenience is a very important way of addressing the needs of adult learners. And the quality of technology and the pedagogy that is out there, and our faculty are very well positioned in being able to deliver the content in state-of-the-art technology. So we are very well equipped with the learning management tools, with state-of-the-art, high-quality techniques to provide the content to the audience. So our students are very comfortable with it. So you can be in your home, you can do this at your time, and you can still manage work, family, and continue to develop yourself for the next position you have in mind.
Yeah. In addition to the adult domestic audience, we are also expanding our reach internationally.
Yeah.
And again, it's a response to declining number of 18-year-olds in the United States, but a booming number of 18-year-olds in fast developing countries.
Yeah.
And one area in particular that we've had great success is Brazil.
Yeah, let me talk a little bit about that. We are very fortunate to have really outstanding universities in this country. And as LaSalle University, we're well known worldwide because the brothers have been bright enough to
the Christian brothers
who have established LaSalle are all over the world, and we have such a reputable name. Anyway, where I'm taking that to is the U.S. universities are the prime target for international students, and they prefer coming to U.S., and our universities are benefiting from that, and LaSalle is getting its share. So you provided one example. The governments have recognized the quality of the U.S. education, so several governments are sponsoring their citizens, their youth, to spend some time in U.S. to get some education. So the Brazilian program is geared for science students that come from Brazil for a year, and we're very fortunate to have 21 outstanding men and women at LaSalle studying in fields like geology, biology, and computer science, and they'll be here for 1 year, and they also did some English preparation, and they'll be, at the end of this year, they'll be going back, and we'll get a new group here. So this is an ongoing program, and they mix very well with our students. Our faculty are very pleased to have a great diversity in the classroom, and they are really outstanding students, and their English is very strong. So we are enjoying their presence on campus.
Yeah, I know they've really enlivened Holroyd Hall, where our science programs are housed, and added a lot of vitality to some of our programs. Yes. Where else are we finding students, Joe?
Yeah,
where are they coming from?
Well, we are getting a lot of students from China and Vietnam. So China is a big market for U.S. universities. Obviously, you have a large number of big population. And just like the Brazilians, the Chinese have also realized that the knowledge economy is where they want to be at. So they need to develop the workforce to be able to compete in the next phase. So these emerging market countries, China, Brazil, Turkey, Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, they do have the population. However, they don't have strong university infrastructure, and they want to diversify their students. And the Chinese are interested in what they call turtles, the sea turtles. So sea turtles are, sea turtles go back, right? So the Chinese government is envisioning that these Chinese students are going to get the U.S. education, and they're going to return back to China and help Chinese economy to develop. So will these sea turtles go back? And it looks like they are actually doing that.
Yeah, and I think our government has encouraged them to go back also. That's become part of the issue as well. But it's interesting that from an international perspective, the reputation of American higher education couldn't be stronger, and yet domestically it's under fire, as we said. What's the value of a college education? And despite what the numbers say, there's still some doubt by policymakers.
It is. And the other thing we have at the university, we have an English Language Institute. So for international students who don't have the level of English that is sufficient for them to take a full set of classes, we now have an opportunity for them to improve their English, and then they matriculate to one of our undergraduate or graduate programs.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but we've also offered that to even domestic students who are coming where English is not the first language at home, but if they want a college education, they can come into our ESL program and really learn academic English so that they can succeed in the classroom.
Right. So we measure, when the students come in, we assess their level of English, and sometimes, as you pointed out, the spoken English might be very strong, but the academic English needs some help. So we do quite a bit of assessing, or figuring out what each student needs. And being in Philadelphia and being in a very diverse city, we have several advantages. First of all, we can attract international students to a beautiful city, which provides many opportunities. And the second thing is Philadelphia being so diverse, we have a very multinational population. So we have different neighborhoods and we have different populations. So it is very attractive to come take the subway and end up at LaSalle.
Yeah, right. So we're meeting students where they are.
Exactly. Jean-Baptiste LaSalle.
Yeah. My guest has been Dean Joseph UGRAS of the College of Continuing and Professional Studies at LaSalle University. Once again, my name is Joe Marbach, the Provost at LaSalle. Thank you for watching.